Hello my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady, where people mistake customers as employees. And in today's episode, a rich Karen thinks that because she's rich, she's allowed to attack police without repercussions. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's lineup of stories. Hit subscribe if you haven't. And as always, you can send or link your stories to this email right here. And guys, before we get into the stories today, listen, I got so many emails from you guys saying that there's someone scamming people in the comments section as me, using my sheep picture, using my DarkFluff name. So I just want to let you guys know that I will never, ever reply to your comments asking you to join random WhatsApp groups, Telegram groups, donate money, buy Bitcoin, reply to emails to win free things, etc, etc. So please be wary of that, guys. But with that said, I will, however, reply to your comments telling you to have a wonderful day. Because hey, everyone deserves to have a wonderful day. With that said, guys, let's dive into today's wacky stories. So I'm a fairly tall guy, about 6'5", and I get asked to grab something off the top shelf by someone shorter than me on quite a regular basis. And when I see someone struggling to reach a product, I often offer to help myself. So on this day, of course, when I saw this little old lady all stretched out and standing on her toes trying to reach for a bag of chips, I asked, "Hey, do you need some help, ma'am?" The lady says, "Oh yes, dear, if you can grab me 2 bags, that would be wonderful." I say to her, "No problem, here you are." I then hand her 2 packs. The little lady tells me how I remind her of her grandson because he's tall as well, and he also wears those kinds of music shirts. A shirt with a skull on it. Now we keep chatting for about 5 minutes, and during this time, the Karen of the story pops her head in and looks in our general direction, but I didn't think anything about it yet. So after about 5 minutes, the lady thanks me again and she goes on her own way. Time for me to choose what kind of chips that I want. But that's interrupted by Karen marching up to me asking, "Are you finally done talking? I've been waiting for about 15 minutes. What do you think your boss would say about wasting 15 minutes talking to a customer?" Now hearing that, I am quite confused, and I say, I'm pretty sure he doesn't care whom I talk to. Karen says, "You're trying to tell me that he doesn't mind you wasting time? You're stealing money from this business." I tell her, yeah, and even if he would mind, I don't see how it would be any of his business. The woman completely ignores what I just said, and I need this brand of coffee beans. Now me, still oblivious to the fact that she thinks I'm an employee, say, "As far as I know, all coffee's in the next aisle. I'm sure you'll find it there." Karen tells me, "I know it's in the next aisle, you idiot, but the shelf where it's supposed to be is empty. That's why I'm asking you. Can you do your job or what?" At that I say, "Well, I'm sorry, I can't help you then." And I turn around to look at the chips again. And that's when the woman says, "That's it, I tried to be nice. I'm getting your manager." It's not until now that I realize that she thinks I'm an employee here, even though I'm wearing a black t-shirt with a skull on it, and the employees wear a light blue button-up shirt with a name tag. I wanted to explain to her that I do not in fact work here and that this must be a misunderstanding, but she's storming off. I continue shopping, and a few minutes later, while I'm standing at the dairy section next to an actual employee who's stalking, I hear her shouting again. The woman is shouting, "That one, that's him right there. He refuses to do his job." The manager walks to the employee who's standing next to me and says to him, "Hey, this lady tells me you've been wasting 15 minutes just making small talk to a customer, and then you refuse to help her. Can you tell me what happened?" The employee tells the manager, That's not true. I did help someone find the grated cheese, but I went right back to stocking shelves, I swear." The Karen then screams, "No, not him, the other one, that idiot." She then points to me, and the manager looks at me and then to Karen and says, "Ma'am, this is obviously not an employee here." I say to Karen, "No, how the F did you think that I was an employee? I obviously don't even look like one. Look what I'm wearing." Karen replies, "Ugh, now he's swearing at customers. You need to fire him." I just facepalm at this moment. I then look at the manager in the eyes and say, "You know what? No need to fire me. I quit effective immediately." I then turn to the employee who's failing to understand what's going on and say, "It was nice working with you, man. I'll see you later." I then shake his hand. I could see all three trying to figure out what just happened when I walked past them to check out, and I couldn't stop laughing on my walk home. You know what, guys? Even though OP got the last laugh at the end, unfortunately, it only made the woman believe that she got exactly what she wanted that day, which was to make OP jobless. And come on, a black t-shirt with a skull on it? Come on, Karen, think. Like, it's not even the same color as the employee uniforms. So this only happened a couple of hours ago, around 9 p.m. I had a crazy craving for conversation hearts. You know the little candy hearts that taste like chalk that nobody seems to like? Yeah, I'm that one weirdo who does. After having gone to 4 stores, I had almost given up, until I made my last-ditch effort, which was to go to Walmart, since I hate going to that store. Now, I did have some other shopping to do, but unless I had the hearts in my hand, I wasn't gonna grab a cart. I managed to find a guy who actually worked there, and he was really nice, and he showed me where the hearts were. I grabbed about 5 bags since I'm a sugar fiend, and then head off to grab a cart. So after grabbing a cart, I'm grabbing some stuff like you naturally do in Walmart. And prior to leaving, my mother had asked me to get some cookies, so I'm by the bakery taking pictures of them and sending them off to her. I also grab whatever items I'm gonna buy and noticed that the table of cookies had been ransacked. I decide to grab some cookies, but at the same time help straighten out the table of cookies to be nice. I was also looking down at my phone and jotting off what I still needed there. And no less than 5 seconds do I hear a very loud "excuse me." Now I hadn't looked up because I foolishly thought it had nothing to do with me. When I heard it again, I began to feel a little frightened, but I still kept my head down and pretended to be an ostrich. The third time, what followed that banshee scream was a cart shoved full force into my gut. And here's the following exchange. The woman screams, "Finally, you look up. It only took me ramming you with a cart to get your effing attention. I need help finding something, and if you didn't look down at your phone so much, maybe you'd actually do your job." I decide to tell her straight and say, "Look, I don't work here, lady." The woman argues, "Yes you do, don't lie." Before she could say another word, I cut her off and say, "Look, I'm wearing pictures of 2 disco balls. Do you see any other employee wearing disco balls on their chest?" The Karen stutters and says, well, you were just stocking that table right there. Why else would you clean it up?" I tell her maybe I did that because I'm a decent person. And by this time, the cool employee who had helped me find the candy had walked up and asked what's going on. And before I could explain, she had told him how lazy I was and how I should be fired. The guy tells her again that I don't work there, and she got frustrated. And at that moment, she swung her hand to knock down all the butter on the shelf, but instead of hitting the butter, she hits her hand on the metal shelf itself. It was then she screams in pain, and her cries of pain were so loud that it nearly blew my eardrums. I had to step back, and so did the employee. We were both afraid to do anything. This had also caused quite the commotion, and other shoppers were staring at us by this point. Now here's the funny part. As soon as she saw she had a crowd, she clutched her hand and pretended to cry, screaming, "She did this to me. This girl did, right here." The security guard who had been at the front of the store comes over, and he did not have an ounce of sympathy for her. He told her that since she was disruptive to other shoppers and had purposefully tried to destroy merchandise, that she could either leave willingly or he would physically escort her out. While the woman was walking out, she began to call the 3 of us every name in the book and kept screaming to have me fired along with calling corporate. I was apologized to and offered a discount, which was nice, but I declined. I was just so happy that this experience was over with, and it felt like a bad dream. I'm home now in my bed typing this out while eating my candy. And for those of you who are curious as to what the t-shirt looks like, here it is. Yeah guys, that definitely does not look like an employee t-shirt at all. Like, maybe at a party store, but definitely not Walmart. But with that said, I want to say that I'm so surprised that the woman thought ramming a random person with her cart was the best way to get their attention. But I also want to say that's not the craziest way that I've seen a Karen try to get someone's attention. And if that were me guys, I might have responded by booting the cart right back at her. Hashtag I'm very badass. Okay, so several years back, I worked for a contract security company and was assigned temporarily to a bank that was closing for renovations. This was a really nice building too. It was built in the 20s, still had the original stone wall panels and floors and all that. Basically, they were rearranging how the offices on the 3rd through 7th floors were arranged and setting up for some new government offices on the 8th through 12th. Now, it was obvious that the place was closed. The big sign out front was covered, all but one door was locked, and there were big signs on the windows and doors saying, "Closed for construction," in red lettering, which I imagine was 512-point font. It was big letters. Below that was the other locations and their phone numbers. I wish I had thought to count how many people walked in thinking the place was open, but a few come to mind, and the worst was towards the end of the assignment, a frickin' Karen. So the door opens on this day, and who should walk in but the most perfect example of "I want to talk to your manager" that I've ever seen. The Karen walks in and breezes past me. All the while, I'm telling her that the bank is closed. I follow her to the closed teller stations before finally getting her to stop. She says, "Is there anyone here?" I tell her no, as I've been saying that the bank's been closed for renovations. She then says, "I have business to do, so get someone out here." I look at her and say, "Ma'am, the bank, it's closed. There's no one here that can do any business with you." She then looks right at me and says, "You are full of crap. They would never leave a place like this to a rent-a-cop. So go get them like a good boy." Do you have any idea how much money I have at this bank? I have millions, so I'm pretty sure they'd fire you in a heartbeat to keep me happy. At this point, I've had beyond enough. I tell her, "Ma'am, you either leave or I'm calling the cops. It's that simple. I told you, there's nobody here that can serve you." Of course, the woman thinks that I'm completely bluffing. I put a call into the police department, which is literally right next door, and within a minute, I see a car pull out onto the street into the parking lot. All the while, Karen's screeching once again that I'm lying, boasting about how much money she has, and just trying to be difficult. The officer walks in and asks what the problem is, and that's when the woman goes full-blown crazy. The woman shouts at me and the officer that she once again has millions of dollars, and that she would have both our jobs. And then comes the cherry on top. So after several minutes of trying to calm her down, the officer tells her to leave or be charged with trespassing. And the woman didn't take kindly to that. And in what I can only describe as modern natural selection in action, the woman throws her purse at the cop, hitting him square in the face. A cuffing later, she's hauled off screaming like a banshee that he's not allowed to arrest her. Of course, I had a ton of paperwork to do over the incident, but it wasn't too bad. She ended up actually calling the bank and demanding I be fired, but by that time, construction had finished and I got a new plant assignment. So it went from "I don't work here, lady" to instant karma, and it couldn't have happened to a more deserving person. Guys, listen, regardless of how much money you have in the bank, it doesn't allow you to throw a purse in an officer's face and not be arrested. Like, this kind of entitlement is horrific. Like, the woman walks in and thinks, those signs don't apply to me because I'm me and it's all about me and what I want. And guys, I've said this before, regular Karens are bad, but super duper rich Karens are a nightmare on a different level. This happened to me 2 days ago when I was working in a small store. I'm a part-time employee and usually only work a few hours a day, so I don't have a break. On this day, it was a very busy day, and my team leader asked me to stay for 2 more hours. I said yes, and since it's more than 6 hours of work now, that means I get a 1-hour break. When my break began, I walked out of the store to go to the supermarket right next to us. It was a big one with smaller stores inside, including a bakery. Now usually, I just get in, grab water and bread, but since I have a little more time, I decided to go around and look for mostly candies and other things to waste my money on. That's when I come across a very chaotic looking shelf. And since I wanted something from that shelf, I tried my best to make it look normal again. And that's when it happens. I hear a very loud ahem from behind me. And then I turn around only to see a lady who was about my height but a little more on the chubby side. Like almost everyone here, I moved to the side, thinking, oh, she must want something from the shelf. But the woman says, no, you come here. I then look at her confused and she says, I need this item right now. Now, I don't think I have to mention that she was very rude. I just look at her shaking my head and simply said, I'm sorry, I don't know. So a little bit about me is I'm not a big talker, and when a stranger talks to me, I tend to stutter and trip over my own words. So I tried to sound relaxed. I wanted to turn around and walk away, but the lady then grabs my arm and she was surprisingly strong. The Karen screams, you don't know? You work here. How can you not know where something is? At this point, I tried to free my arm, but it was still no use. What I forgot to mention was I was wearing a name tag from my store. It was a name tag that simply said, team member. We will gladly help you out. Now, the store I work at and the supermarket store have very different names, obviously, and I point with my free hand at the name tag and say, excuse me, but I don't work here. I'm just on my break and I just wanted to get some. The woman interrupts me and says, I don't care what you have to say. I need this item right now. I have kids in the car and things that need to be in a fridge. Of course, the yelling attracted some other customers and they start to watch. Gladly, a man around his 50s comes over and tried to calm the lady down, but it was no use. It got louder and finally an employee of the supermarket comes over and he asks what's going on. I tried to explain, but my panicking plus stuttering made it impossible to talk. And the lady finally lets go of my arm and walks over to the employee and says, "This girl was very rude to me. I just asked where this item was and she told me to F right off, and she flipped me off." The employee looked at me and asked if I'm okay. Technically, I was, but I shook my head no. At this point, I'm sobbing, which was very embarrassing. The man finally spoke up and told the employee what happened, what he said and heard. Another employee comes over and took me away, and then asked for my side of the story and tried to calm me down. My break was already 10 minutes over by this point, and I just wanted to get out and go home. After some time, I was now calm and tried to talk to the employee about the stupid stuff that happened. Meanwhile, the lady was still yelling and now demanding a manager. The manager comes over and asked what's wrong. After that, he went away, and I assumed to check the cameras, but I don't know. At this point, I was an hour late from my lunch break. The manager comes back and says, "I'm sorry, lady, but I have to ask you to leave. I just checked the cameras and asked the other people, and it seemed like you started this fight." The lady tried to bark at the manager, but he continued and said, "Those people told me how this fight started, and I have to tell you this. I can guarantee you that this girl," pointing to me, "doesn't work here." Hearing that, the lady was now white instead of red, but she still tried causing a scene. I got up and left my things in a basket and asked if I can leave now. The manager nodded while talking to the lady, so I walked out of the store. I told my team leader what happened, and I got the rest of the day off as I couldn't concentrate after this, and went to grab my things. Ready to leave, I then saw a police car pull up. I walked out, and the next thing I saw was the lady who yelled at me in the supermarket was getting escorted out by the police. The next day, I went back to the supermarket and asked what happened. So apparently the lady became physical, and I was told she punched the manager in the face, and the police had to come take her away. Guys, what surprises me most about this story is the fact that the lady left her kids in the car for that long, all to abuse frickin' employees. And this person says, "Some people just think they're entitled to the world. I've been run over by shopping carts and threatened with scissors. There's a reason why I don't work in customer service anymore, and I'm glad you're okay. And I'm sorry that the woman didn't let up when you became visibly upset. It's embarrassing and unsettling, but hold your head high because you did the best you could in that situation." This happened a few years ago, but it felt oh so satisfying. For a period of time, I worked for a New England-based hardware and garden store. We had a customer that was the most impolite individual. Definitely thought of retail people lower than himself and treated every clerk with contempt. Well, my course had changed and I moved on from said job and was now working as a carpenter. And I was at that location to buy something for a project I was working on. The uniform at the store was a dark green polo and a dark green fleece as a cover-up. Now, I'm a pretty woodsy guy. Almost all my clothes are brown, tan, black, green, and this day, I happen to be wearing dark brown pants with a dark green sweatshirt from a local building supply company. Now, it's easy to see that it wasn't a store-issued garment with any real observation. I'm in the hardware aisle when this guy walks into the aisle. I made no notice, besides that someone had entered the space. The man repeatedly clears his throat. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that guy sounds horribly sick. The guy clears his throat again, and this time he says, "Excuse me." Now with that, I give him a quick, "Sorry," thinking I'm blocking the shelving he needs something off of, and I move over. The man then says, "No, you're supposed to help me." I tell him, no, I'm not. I no longer work for this company. The man then tells me that I'm full of crap and that he sees me regularly. I'm even wearing a uniform. I tell him, this is my company sweatshirt. I haven't worked here in almost a year. And the reason I'm here regularly is because, like you, it's the closest hardware store to my house. The man then says to me, well, you're gonna help me anyway because you know stuff about what I need. I tell him, no, that is no way happening. I didn't get paid enough when I did work here to put up with your crappy attitude, and now that I'm not making any money for this interaction, I'm definitely not putting up with it. The man then screams at me saying, I'm gonna tell your manager about this. I tell him, and what's she gonna do exactly? Hold your hand and tell you it's gonna be okay? She's no longer my boss, so good luck with that. He then says, I can't believe how rude you are. To which I respond, that's Rich. Are you really that self-unaware? Have you ever not actually thought about why, when I did work here, that I was the only one to help you? I'll clue you in. It's because no one else wanted to. And I wanted to keep them from your condescension and your entitled attitude. Now, about this time, the store manager had come around to find me. She had heard a decent amount of what was said on the way over. As she walks into the aisle, the man turns to her and says, "Your so-called former employee is verbally abusing me, and he says that no one ever wants to help me because I'm a jerk." Now, my store manager doesn't have much of a filter, and she responds with, "Well, he is a former employee, and he hasn't worked here for nearly a year. And frankly, he's not wrong. He doesn't have to help you." The look on the man's face was priceless. He just harumphed and told her that he would take his business elsewhere, which he got a simple, "You do that," from her. Now, we had a good laugh, and the vindication from her, coupled with the opportunity to say what I did, was fantastic. Guys, I love stories where ex-employees get to tell Karens how they actually feel. And I just want to say that I hope he learned from this, and it opened his eyes to what a jerk he is. But hey, that's asking a little bit too much, right? And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed, do subscribe, because these stories are wild. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'll link it right here. An entitled Karen demands OP get out of her wheelchair and walk because she doesn't believe that her legs are actually broken. Guys, it's such a crazy story, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.